Sean Golden, Chief Economist here at Limerick Chamber. You're very welcome to the post.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, you had a huge report last week, the Mid Westeconomy Insights report. There was a webinar as well. Talk to us about the findings.
Yeah, so I suppose that the findings of the report, it represents a number of months' work for myself and Diarmuid and the policy team here. Overall, employment is doing quite good. The unemployment rate is back down to pre-pandemic levels, and we've more people working now than we did at the end of 2019. So that's in a good space, to be fair. I suppose less of a good space is housing. If you have a read down through the housing section, comes as a surprise to nobody, really, to be honest with you. One of the things that we do is we track the monthly rental properties on Daft and My Home, and we found that in April, just last month, there was only 21 residential properties available. Only 5 of those were one beds. So the supply is extremely low, and that's across, we'd say, Limerick City and suburbs. If you look at the amount of homes that we built last year, we built about 606 in 2021 in Limerick, but owner-occupiers only got about 30% of them. So there's a real gap there in the market of delivery. If you look at the ESRI reports, they say we need about 1,200 to 1,800 a year. So the main findings really overall is that employment is good. Housing, to nobody's surprise, is not in a great spot at all.
Speaking about housing, I guess, I see with a lot of my own friends here in Limerick, a lot of people can get mortgages but then cannot afford anything that's out there. As you mentioned, there's nothing out there. A lot of people are getting outbid. An awful lot of people just want to get their home. It's not even just a case of getting on the property ladder and becoming an investor and a property manager. People just want homes.
Yeah, and you'll find that a lot, Megan, as well when you talk to people. When they're talking about delivering homes, they'll say delivering units. And it has become like a financialisation of, the housing sector. But at the end of the day, they're homes. They're homes for people like me and you. If you look at the asking price across Daft pre-pandemic versus now, it's about 40 grand over. So if you look at anybody that was lucky enough to keep their job through COVID and get a bit of savings, it has been completely wiped out by the increase in the house prices themselves. So I think it is an issue that we're keenly aware of. There needs to be more affordable housing. And that's for purchase and for rent and for that key worker mid-market cohort as well,
Speaking about renting, obviously we've seen all over social media the last few days that, you've mentioned Daft and myhome.ie, that there's very few even rental properties at the moment. But when you look on Airbnb and on these holiday rentals, there's thousands.
Yeah.
Huge problem.
Yeah, it's something that has to be looked at. I think it's worth being mindful of as well, that I think, if you go on and look at Airbnb, you might be getting, a cabin that's out in the field, or, last year I stayed in a tent down the Burren and I loved it. But it's not going to be a home full time. It's a weekend job. So while, it's highly possible that Airbnb is totally engulfing what could be there for rental, the numbers might be a bit more skewed, but it's something that we're starting to look at here now as well, because it's something that has to be looked at. On that Daft report, there was only about 800 homes to rent across the entirety of the country. It's the supply is really bad. And if it's something that's been diverted to Airbnb, then it's something that has to be looked at by policymakers and government.
You did mention there, I suppose the good news is that unemployment is down, and I've seen a huge, incentive to get people into construction, which I guess is going to hopefully help the housing prices. But realistically, that's probably years away.
It depends how long it takes to train them, Megan, and it depends on the appetite to deliver the homes as well. I think a lot of people talk about supply as if supply is the holy grail to housing. I mean, developers are only going to deliver housing up to the point where it suits them. I don't think they're going to deliver once they keep losing money. Why would anyone do that when they're operating a business? That's why it's important for the state to step in. I think, the unemployment story, while it's good, it's probably leaning towards more of an issue for businesses as well. So we have a lot of businesses reporting to us that they're having trouble getting staff. They're having trouble retaining staff. They need to be upskilled, reskilled. So as we move towards full unemployment or full employment, it's probably going to be more of a issue for business. And it's mad that we're in the situation that we're saying, our employment story is too good that it's starting to get bad for businesses. But that's where we are. But there needs to be people trained in a diverse range of sectors. And it can't be just about third level either. It has to be about apprenticeships, further education and training, and there has to be a broad scope there. Something like, hospitality sector as well. I think us here on Mid West Coast, there's a high concentration of, we'll say tourism related businesses. So that's an area that we should be looking at as well in terms of getting apprenticeships up and going. I know there was some stuff announced the other day for bar management, so it is looking good, but you have to keep up the momentum. It's the way it is.
Absolutely. And just back there to the housing, we look at European cities, long-term rentals is what a lot of people do. In fact, there's not that many homeowners in a lot of the urban areas. So is this maybe a model that we could look at, not just in the Midwest but in all of Ireland, that maybe we start building apartment blocks and giving long-term leases?
Absolutely it is, and we kind of have it on the go at the moment. So if you look at Vienna, they have about 60% of their population in kind of government housing, mainly cost rental. And what cost rental is, it's essentially just the cost of delivering the block plus a management fee and a bit of inflation. And it really decreases the price of the apartment. But at the moment, it's really only up and running in Dublin. We don't have much of it outside Dublin at all. And even what's in Dublin is only small bits and pieces. So the beauty of cost rental for the most part is that it's secure tenure. It's kind of open-ended leases. Okay. And it's cheaper than private market. But it's not good enough to just deliver that in Dublin. It has to be delivered outside Dublin. Even if you look at the local authority delivery targets for affordable housing out to 2026, 77% of affordable housing to be delivered by local authorities, it is within the Greater Dublin area. 70% in Dublin alone. So we have about 3% here in Limerick. It's going to be 53 on average per annum. So anyone looking at that could say it's really not good enough. We need to be made aware of this. But you're right, like that type of cost rental model that works in European cities has to be done here. But of course there is the issue with viability around building apartments, particularly building apartments outside Dublin, outside the Greater Dublin area. And that's something that'll have to be addressed. I know they're working on it, and there has been a bit of a to and fro with the opposition and the government on that. But I mean, these things need to be done as a matter of urgency, because I think if you look what'll happen, I think people like me and you that are in a broadly similar age cohort, if we can't buy a house now, we're going to rely on private housing when we're at retirement age. Our pensions, as is, with the data that's out there, isn't going to be sufficient to rent private housing. So you could end up in a situation where you have a bunch of 65 plus year olds that are borderline homeless because they weren't in a position to buy a house in their 30s or their 40s, and they're relying on it till into their 60s. So we're in a position now where, number one, we have to deliver housing for people in our age cohort, younger and older, but they also need to start thinking about age-friendly housing for people that are in our cohort that's going to be relying on the private market at that stage. And that's a real worry, and I don't hear many people talking about that. I think it's something they need to be aware of. That's why it's important. Other European countries have a better social system that would allow people to rent longer term. I don't think we have it here. You're in the issue that if you're renting in the private sector and you do lose your job and you have no income protection, you are going to be in a bit of trouble. You're probably not going to be able to rent that apartment. So, you need to have the likes of cost rental. You need to have the social support system in there for everybody, but you need to be thinking of the lifetime of people in housing as well. So yeah, it's a key issue, you're right.
For those who want to read more about the report, is it available online?
It is indeed, yeah, it's available online, so you can go onto limerickchamber.ie under the influence section, and we also have a couple of copies printed off as well, so they can call in and pick them up at the front desk if they want.
Sean Golden, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Megan.